When the moment finally arrived, it wasn't loud, dramatic, or chaotic, and that's what made it unforgettable. I didn't raise my voice or accuse her in front of everyone. Instead, I asked a single, calm question that instantly shifted the mood in the room. At first, she laughed it off, confident as ever, but when I followed up with dates, numbers, and details she never expected me to know, her expression changed in a way I'll never forget. One by one, I laid out the truth, not as a story, but as a sequence of facts that spoke for themselves. I watched as her confidence unraveled, as she tried to interrupt, deflect, and joke her way out of it, only to realize there was nowhere left to hide. The room grew quiet, not because I demanded attention, but because everyone could feel the weight of what was being revealed. I handed over copies of records, timelines, and evidence I had carefully preserved for years, and for the first time, the version of her everyone believed in began to crack. Some people looked shocked, others confused, and a few tried to make excuses for her, but even they couldn't ignore the consistency of the proof. She denied it at first, then shifted blame, then finally fell silent when she realized the story she had built for herself no longer worked. What struck me most wasn't her reaction, but the realization that I no longer felt angry. The rage that had fueled my patience for 5 years dissolved into a quiet sense of clarity. I wasn't there to punish her emotionally or humiliate her publicly. I was there to reclaim what was mine and to make it impossible for the truth to be buried again. In the days that followed, the consequences unfolded naturally. Trust was broken, alliances shifted, and the family dynamics changed in ways no one had anticipated. My sister avoided me, not because she was angry, but because she finally understood that silence didn't mean weakness. It meant preparation. I recovered what I could, not just in money, but in something far more valuable, my sense of control and self-respect. People who once dismissed my concerns began to look at me differently, realizing that patience and restraint can be more powerful than confrontation. The 5 years I spent waiting weren't about revenge in the traditional sense, they were about accountability. I didn't celebrate her downfall or gloat over the outcome, because what mattered wasn't seeing her suffer, it was knowing that she could no longer pretend nothing happened. The lesson I took from all of this stayed with me long after the situation settled. Betrayal doesn't always need an immediate reaction, and justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes the most effective response is quiet, deliberate, and undeniable. And while I never imagined my life would take this turn, I learned that even when someone takes everything from you, they can never take your ability to wait, observe, and choose the right moment to take your power back. The moment I chose to wait for wasn't something dramatic or explosive on the surface, and that's exactly why it was perfect. Over the years, I had learned that my sister thrived on attention and control, and the worst possible outcome for her would be losing both in front of the people she trusted the most. The opportunity arrived when she decided to make a big move in her life, one she announced proudly at a family gathering, smiling as she explained her plans and soaking in everyone's admiration. I remember sitting there, listening carefully, realizing that this single decision had unknowingly lined up every piece of the puzzle I had been collecting for years. From that day on, I shifted from observation to preparation. I quietly organized my evidence into a clear narrative, making sure every document, every transfer, every contradiction was aligned and undeniable, because I knew that emotions alone wouldn't be enough. This needed to be airtight. I also started setting boundaries in subtle ways, pulling back just enough to make her slightly uncomfortable without raising suspicion, letting her sense a change but never understand it. She noticed, of course. She always did. She asked if something was wrong, joked about me being distant, even hinted that I seemed jealous of her success. And each time, I smiled and reassured her that everything was fine. The truth was, the closer she got to achieving what she wanted, the closer she came to losing everything. I began to imagine the moment of confrontation, not as an argument, but as a quiet unveiling, where facts spoke louder than anger ever could. What made the stage so intense was the internal battle I fought daily. Part of me still wanted to believe she might confess on her own, that there was a chance she would make things right before it all blew up. But every interaction erased that hope. She continued to manipulate, to lie effortlessly, to treat my silence as weakness, and that confirmed I was doing the right thing. I watched as she made promises based on money she didn't truly own, commitments built on stolen ground, completely unaware that the foundation beneath her was cracking. There were moments when I almost felt sorry for her, seeing how convinced she was of her own invincibility. But that sympathy vanished every time I remembered the nights I lay awake, wondering how I would recover from her betrayal. As the date of her big moment approached, the tension inside me became unbearable. Not because I was afraid of the outcome, but because I knew there was no turning back. I double-checked everything one last time, making copies, backing up files, ensuring that nothing could be destroyed or denied. I even prepared myself for the possibility that some family members might still defend her, that truth doesn't always win immediately, but I trusted the strength of what I had gathered. By the time she stood proudly at the center of attention, convinced she was about to step into the next chapter of her life, I was already standing at the edge of mine, ready to let the truth surface at the exact moment it would hurt the most. She thought the spotlight was hers, but she had no idea it was about to expose everything. Once I realized my sister had left a trail behind, everything changed, but not in the way she would have expected. I didn't rush, didn't celebrate, and definitely didn't reveal my discovery to anyone, because I knew this phase was the most dangerous part of the entire plan. I started moving like a shadow, following the money carefully, step by step, teaching myself things I never imagined I'd need to know about transactions, delays, intermediaries, and the subtle ways people try to hide financial wrongdoing without realizing how predictable human behavior really is. I noticed how she always moved money right after certain events, how her confidence spiked when she thought she was untouchable, and how she underestimated me completely. That was her biggest weakness. She still saw me as the naive sibling who had been hurt, embarrassed, and quietly defeated, and I let her believe it. At family gatherings, she would talk over me, interrupt my stories, and casually remind everyone how responsible she was, while I nodded politely and kept my thoughts to myself. Every time she dismissed me, it fueled my patience even more. Behind the scenes, I began assembling everything into a timeline, lining up bank alerts, transaction histories, and even indirect evidence. Messages she'd sent bragging about opportunities she never actually had, receipts that matched dates she claimed she was broke, and conversations where she contradicted herself without realizing it. What scared me wasn't that I might fail, but that if I moved too early, she would sense it and erase the final proof I needed. There were days when I felt like I was living two lives, one where I smiled, laughed, and played the role of the supportive sibling, and another where I was constantly calculating, double-checking, and asking myself what she would do next. And then just when I thought I had seen every angle, she slipped again. During a casual conversation, she mentioned an account I knew she shouldn't have known about, a detail so small that no one else noticed, but to me, it was thunder. That single sentence confirmed she had access far beyond what she claimed, and it told me exactly where to look next. I remember sitting alone afterward, replaying her words over and over, realizing that this wasn't just about recovering my savings anymore. It was about revealing a pattern of deception she had built her entire image on. Still, I waited. I wanted her to feel safe, untouchable, confident enough to keep making mistakes. I even let myself be the butt of a few jokes, let her borrow small amounts she never paid back, all to reinforce the idea that I was harmless. Inside, though, I was already preparing for the moment everything would collapse. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that she believed time protected her, that 5 years of silence meant forgiveness or forgetfulness. She had no idea that silence was my strategy, not my weakness. And as the evidence stacked higher, I realized something chilling. When the truth finally came out, it wouldn't just shock her, it would shock everyone who ever defended her, everyone who told me to let it go, and everyone who thought family betrayal didn't have consequences. By the end of that year, I had enough proof to change everything. But instead of acting, I made a decision that even surprised myself. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I was going to wait for the moment when exposure would hurt the most, when there would be no way for her to talk her way out of it, no one left to shield her, and no escape from what she had done. And that moment was closer than she realized. For the next few years, my life became a strange balance between pretending nothing was wrong and quietly preparing for a reckoning I wasn't sure would ever come. On the outside, I played the role everyone expected of me. The calm sibling, the forgiving one, the person who had moved on. Inside, though, every interaction with my sister felt like walking through a minefield. She grew bolder as time passed, and that confidence told me more than any confession ever could. She upgraded her lifestyle in ways that didn't match her income, casually showing up with new clothes, a better phone, weekend trips she brushed off as lucky breaks. Each time she spoke, I listened carefully, not just to what she said, but to what she avoided. I started to notice patterns, how she panicked when finances came up, how she deflected questions, how she suddenly changed topics when certain dates or amounts were mentioned. I learned to ask innocent questions, the kind that sounded harmless, but made her slip just enough to reveal cracks in her story. At night, I organized everything. Bank statements, old emails, text messages, even screenshots of social media posts where she unknowingly revealed timelines that didn't add up. Every small detail mattered, because I knew that one day I wouldn't just need truth, I'd need proof. There were moments when the weight of it all nearly broke me, nights when I stared at the ceiling wondering if the money was already gone forever and whether waiting was a mistake. But each time doubt crept in, I reminded myself that rushing would only help her. She wanted me emotional and reckless. Instead, I gave her silence and patience. What made it harder was watching my family unknowingly praise her, trust her, even defend her when conversations brushed too close to the truth. I realized then that exposing her wouldn't just be about getting my money back. It would shatter the version of her everyone believed in, and that required absolute precision. Then, something unexpected happened. I received a notification from my bank about an old linked account I hadn't checked in years, one I had nearly forgotten existed. At first I ignored it, thinking it was irrelevant. But curiosity got the better of me, and when I logged in, my hands started shaking. There were transfers, small ones at first, spread out carefully, almost intelligently, leading to a destination I didn't recognize. But the dates lined up perfectly with the period when my savings had vanished. My sister had gotten sloppy, just enough to leave a trail behind. That's when I understood something crucial. She hadn't just taken my money once. She had been moving it, hiding it, reshaping it, convinced no one was watching. For the first time in years, I felt the balance shift. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a thread I could pull. I didn't confront her, didn't hint at what I'd found, didn't even let my tone change when we spoke. Instead, I smiled, asked about her plans, listened as she bragged about how hard work always pays off. Every word she spoke only strengthened my resolve. I began tracing the transfers quietly, following the path of my stolen savings step by step, realizing that the 5 years I had spent waiting weren't wasted at all. They were leading me somewhere very specific. And as the picture became clearer, one thing terrified and excited me at the same time. If I was right, then my sister hadn't just stolen from me, she had made a mistake that could finally expose everything. I never thought the person I trusted most in my life would betray me in the cruelest way imaginable. My sister and I grew up in the same home, shared the same childhood memories, and I always believed that blood meant loyalty. But I was wrong. It all started 5 years ago when I discovered that a significant portion of my savings account had vanished from my account. I had worked tirelessly for years, sacrificing weekends, skipping vacations, and putting every extra penny into building a secure future for myself. At first, I thought it was a bank error or perhaps a scam, but as I dug deeper, the horrifying truth slowly revealed itself. My sister had stolen my money. She had a way of hiding things, smiling innocently while subtly manipulating those around her, and I realized that every casual remark she had made about my savings, every joke about being careful with money, was a warning I had ignored. The betrayal hit me harder than anything else in my life. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, family, and the sense of safety I thought I had grown up with. I tried confronting her at first, thinking maybe she would admit it and we could fix things quietly, but she laughed in my face and pretended she had no idea what I was talking about. Her ability to gaslight me, to twist my words and make me feel like I was overreacting, left me stunned. But I refused to let anger or despair dictate my actions. I knew I had to be smart. Any impulsive move would alert her and she would disappear with my savings completely. That's when I decided to step back, act calm, and wait. For 5 years, I observed, I collected pieces of information quietly, and I planned my strategy meticulously. I watched her lifestyle, her habits, her spending, every interaction she had with friends and family, and I started connecting the dots. The more I learned, the more I realized how cleverly she had manipulated everyone around her, turning even our parents into unsuspecting allies of her deceit. Despite feeling powerless, I reminded myself that time was on my side, and patience would become my secret weapon. I began to keep detailed records, screenshots, copies of bank transfers, and even subtle notes about conversations she thought were private. Every month, every minor slip she made added another brick to the case I was quietly building. Meanwhile, I maintained my routine, never letting anyone suspect that I knew the truth, wearing a mask of normalcy in front of family gatherings, casual conversations, and even during moments when she tried to flaunt her ill-gotten gains. Inside, though, I burned with a quiet determination. I pictured the day when the entire truth would come to light, and she would finally face the consequences of what she had done. And then, one day, a small, almost insignificant event changed everything. I noticed a bank transfer that seemed unusual, a pattern she had tried to hide, and for the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope. I realized that my plan didn't have to wait forever. The pieces were finally aligning, and the moment to reclaim what was mine was approaching. Little did she know, every smile, every laugh she shared in my presence, every casual boast about her success was being carefully documented, analyzed, and used to prepare for the ultimate reveal. And even though it was only the beginning, I could feel the tension building, knowing that the next time we crossed paths under the right circumstances, everything would change, and she would never see it coming.